Cool. We're live.
Cool.
That was a little bit abrupt, sorry.
No, it's all good. Um, yeah, so I guess to start with introductions. I'm Tristan. I'm working on the monitor respond team as a front-end engineer. And yeah, currently located in New Zealand. Yep.
Cool. I'm James, also on the monitor respond team and front end. I'm normally based in Berlin, but I'm visiting home in Australia. So we're finally in a similar time zone.
Yeah, we overlap, which is great. Yeah, and today we're working on a particular issue. I'll just share my screen for this. Yeah, so this issue, metric images tab missing from alert detail view. This is a bug that was raised about a week ago. And there's some details on here. There's a possible fix. So yeah, we'll just dive into that and probably
Did you
start.
add that possible fix?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm describing the instructions that I left for myself or for anyone else who would want to pick this up. Yeah, and it includes like a development sort of fix and also a little note about testing, how it might be tested. Yeah, that's it. And there's a little bit of discussion, some linkages, some talk about severity, although it has actually been set. Yeah, so that's good. So it's been triaged and it's been pulled into the current milestone as well.
Does triage just mean like we added the right labels?
Pretty much, yeah. The general term is, I think, just deciding how important something is.
Okay.
Yeah, so part of the triage process might involve closing something if it's minor enough, or if it's worth keeping, then it'll be given a priority and a severity. Also, we get a lot of issues raised that where you don't really know which team should own it. So triage also includes a bit of like just determining, this is best taken care of by this other team. So you just reassign you would just update the DevOps group section labels. And then I think it would show up in the triage queue for that team whenever they do triage next. And I think we do it. I think the general thing across GitLab is we do it weekly. Yeah. Yeah. So let's open up the dev environment. So I'm currently on master. I should do that thing where we create a branch using the issue number that we talked about in one of the previous live streams. So
you can do that in the issue as well. You scroll down,
cool.
It'll give you a suggested branch name. So you go to create merge request on the right, the big blue button. Sorry,
yeah.
loading screen.
Yeah.
So it gives us suggested
Cool.
branch name. So you
Perfect.
can create a branch on.
Yeah, I'll just do that. And
the only issue with that is like now you have to pull it and then move to that. I did this a couple of times and
that's
it didn't.
all right. Oh, does it take
quickly
a second?
That? Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, I'll just click it now without filling anything in. So that'll kick off the creation of that.
Oh, yeah, that makes more sense.
And
I probably didn't do that bit. Yeah.
And then I'll just, I could just leave this for now. Does it reference? Yeah, it references the issue. Cool. Yeah, I don't really use that, and I don't know why. I should, because it's a great little piece of functionality.
Yeah, I didn't realize it
Um,
creates a draft MR. That's a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I should fetch. And I reconfigured a couple of hours ago. Yeah, so actually this is the only new branch in the last couple of hours. Normally there's like pages of stuff, but it's actually still the weekend for the US
Oh, of
and for
course.
Europe. So yeah. So I'll switch to that. Yeah, looks like it works. Cool. So now I'll just open up my dev environment. Oops. Did not mean to open that. Let's go to cancel. Yeah, cool. And there were some changes. I don't know why that's happening, but yeah, let's look. I think there's even a suggested file. Yeah, alert details. Cool. While we're doing this, I think I will just actually I shouldn't need to restart that, but I'll just refresh. I'll go to the page and refresh it so we have something to compare with as we change. Yes, it's still booting. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. This should be a pretty easy fix because yeah, I definitely introduced this bug because I removed that I removed the tab from the metric tab component. I didn't realize it was being rendered elsewhere.
Yeah.
Obviously I should have checked for that. But yeah, what might be a little bit more interesting is adding the updating the tests because the tests should have picked up this bug that didn't.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Yeah. Sweet. So I'll just paste this in and then we can run the tests. Yeah. And actually, yeah, and just see what the test is called. Yeah, so we've got alert detail spec. Some other ones. This seems to be the top level. So if we were going to do like an integration type test, I don't know if that's what we need, but just speculating that this is where we put it.
What do you mean an integration test? Sorry.
Oh, like between multiple components, because it has. I think the reason why this sort of goes into like why I think the test failed, but which I can briefly explain. But there is actually a test that checks that the metrics image tab component is there and that it exists
Okay.
in the alert details. So alert details is like the parent component with the tabs, and then so that rendered the child components.
Oh, I see.
So this is actually there, and there's a test, and I'll just quickly find it because it would be good to look at. But it passes even when it's not rendered on the page. Yeah, here we go. And that is because so the tabs wrapper got removed from this tab, but it's stubbed. So it's just shallow mounted basically. And because it's shallow mounted, it doesn't care if there's a GL tab inside it or not. It just exists. And so, if we were to like print out the HTML of the like top level component, it would just show metric image tab stub as one line and nothing inside it. Yeah. So the assertion is kind of true. the tab does exist, but it's just stubbed, and we're not actually testing if the tab functions as a tab. So to do that, we would maybe want to do a proper mount of the tab and check that, say, something really basic like the title of the tab is rendered.
Right.
And then that would just prove that the integration between those two components is working correctly. Yeah.
Which we don't usually do because we require, like, we expect each component to have its own tests.
Yeah.
That are sorting it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a weird one that you could make the argument that a JavaScript spec isn't the right place to test this. That actually this would be better suited as a feature spec, like a Ruby Capybara one that renders the page and checks that the tabs are all there. So maybe that's what we do instead, and we just leave this as sort of like roughly working.
So the Ruby spec would be like, go to this page and make sure that each tab is there and that you can do the stuff that you're supposed to do with each tab.
Yeah.
Right. And what would be the reason why we wouldn't have initially done that?
Good question. We probably should have. So I'd say it's been missed. Or maybe it's there and it's passing when it shouldn't. But yeah, I can quickly have a look at that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like feature alert management. Yeah.
And then
so when visiting alert detail page, shows the alert details, and that's it. So there's nothing where it says checks for the metrics tab. So yeah, this is where we would do it.
And then if we're to add the testing for that, we would do that in 2 separate MRs probably, particularly because we want to fix this because it's a higher priority. Get it merged, and then we'd write the test later separately.
Yeah, that's right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to try and close this issue off because it's a bug.
Yeah,
and add a test. And if it's fast to add a test, like if we could do it right now, then we'll submit both.
Yep. If
it proves to be a little bit harder, then it's better to fix the bug and then merge the test later. Yeah. This one in particular has this, because it was actually created, the bug was caused in 15.7. The milestone 15.7. It's interesting that happened because it means currently the bug only affects GitLab.com and it doesn't affect self-hosted instances. So yeah, that's something to know, worth knowing for listeners of this, if you're not aware that there are like different ways to deploy GitLab, and the main one with the most users is like the cloud version that's on GitLab.com. But there are tons of customers that are self-hosting their own one, and there's also an option for GitLab to host a dedicated instance for a customer if they want that as well. That one's called GitLab Dedicated, and it's pretty new actually. But yeah, so because we deploy to GitLab.com like every day, this bug does exist in GitLab.com. There's like an example of it there, but it doesn't exist in self-hosted because the 15.7 self-hosted release hasn't been created yet. Yeah, it will be created really soon though, so like probably in the next week. So that's why it's like, yeah, that's why we'd consider fixing the bug and doing the test as a follow-up. Yeah, good question though. Yeah, so I'll start off by opening that file again. Oh, sorry, I just want to have it next to these other files. So I've got the code here, the JavaScript test, and the feature spec.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll find out where this is being used. So metric image tab is there. We can confirm going into it that there's no tab wrapper. But the other tabs in this alert details have it. So yeah, we'll want to just add one here.
Should be tab.
Oh, tab, yeah.
Tabs, yeah.
Oops, I think, oh, and I've incorrectly put a slash.
And we also need to move
yeah.
the title into the tab component.
Yeah, exactly. So that the metric images tab should no longer have a title prop. That's correct, yeah. No title prop. So I suspect that was used for the tab only. And it has
I reconfigured that one.
Yeah, and it's got the starter test ID, and we'll see what we did here. Yeah, so that's looking pretty much the same as this. The test ID is still on the tab. That is presumably used for this spec. It'll be like a find metrics tab. Oh, finds the component. So we may actually not even need that data test ID. Let's have a look at the tabs config and then we'll do a search for it. So the ID is metrics. Just see if it's used. So that's using the ID, but it's not using the data test ID.
So what's that doing there? I don't understand.
This bit?
Yeah.
So those tabs have been connected to view router. I think. Yeah. So there's a test that's confirming that for each tab, when you set the current tab index as 0, 1, or 2, then the ID for that tab gets pushed to the router, to the browser history. The interesting thing with this is actually when you look at the indexes, because metrics has been removed from the tab component, the indexes are also now wrong. Like this, according to the GL tabs component, activity has index of 1. So this actually causes another bug that is described relatedly. I'll just show that really quick. So it's this thing where if you click the activity feed tab, you end up with metrics in the URL because the metrics tab is missing from the tab list. So yeah, that's also an interesting thought about the way this is implemented. It wouldn't really work if the tabs were being added dynamically, for instance, like if they could be shown in some cases and hidden in other cases. This would the way the router has been done would need to be slightly tweaked. But
so how did this test pass? Is it
this
because
one?
we're using wrapper set data instead of
exactly
clicking on the tab names?
Yeah, and you can see there's a helpful comment actually discouraging that exact thing. Yeah, so that's something that would have come up in review, and possibly there should be a follow-up to refactor this. Yeah, in theory, you should be able to mount the tabs and that you should be able to mount the GL tabs component and the GL tab component, and do a full mount, not a shallow mount, and then click the tab, and then have the same expect, and it should work. So you could replace this with clicks, which would be the more resilient approach. The only issue is just if I don't know if GL tab needs something special when you mount it. Like it might be expecting certain extra, like something to be provided on the context or something like that. But I think it's probably fine, and it's probably that we are I'm going to guess that we're shallow mounting. Yeah, by default we're shallow mounting. So all you'd have to do is like just add the extra field in there that sets it to do a normal mount. Oh, sorry, I went back to the wrong place. But yeah,
similar tests in incidents for these same tabs.
So
we can
that
use
would be good inspiration.
Similar logic there.
Yeah, true. Good point. Yeah. So we should be able to save this, and then if my environment were working, we could view this locally, but unfortunately it's not, and I'm not sure why. I'm going to look at GDK tail to see if there's any obvious issues.
What does that do? I haven't used that.
So GDK has about 10 different services that run. You can see the list of them when you restart, and then GDK tail prints off the last something like 100 lines of logs from each service. So it's a good like quick check to see if anything's broken. And then you can also you can specify a service, so you can go GDK tail webpack. And then if I like GDK restart webpack, and then, oh, that's fun. Oh, I'm not in the right directory. If I restart webpack, this tail should update. Yeah, so tail, the other thing with tail is once it's running, it will live print anything new that gets added to the logs.
Right.
Yeah, and even though there's like a ton of warnings, this is actually a healthy looking webpack because it says that your project is running at this IP import. Yeah, so webpack's fine. That's what that tells us. Rails web is another one to check. I'm actually not very good at telling if this is healthy or not. This is the database that is running, so that's fine. Gitterly says it's listening. This one is worrying me because it says it's shutting down. It's the last thing it said. but maybe workers, maybe that's just workers and it's actually still running. I'm not sure. GitLab work course, this just looks like some regular status messages. Connect no such file or directory. Yeah, that also doesn't look good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just reconfigured before and it was working.
I reconfigured, but I didn't check that it was working. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think for now we're just going to have to keep going with the stream, and I'll figure out the environment later. What we can do though is we can run the tests. So I can run these ones for a start, and then we can also run the feature spec, maybe add something there. Before we do that, I'll just commit what we've added. So I'll add the app. So wrap. I guess what we're doing is we're just fixing the metrics image tab. So for the alert detail page, and it checks that there's no secrets being committed, which is great. And then we'll push this. It'll run some more hooks. And I'm going to assume that they pass and have a look at the tests. So yeah, I'll yarn jest watch, and then I'll paste in just the specific path. And these tests were passing before it broke, and we're still passing after it broke, so I don't expect anything to fail. Yeah, it all looks fine. Yeah, so one thing we talked about was we could do a full mount of the tab, of the GL tabs component, and check if that exists or something like that. What do you
like
think,
what would
James?
be good? Yeah,
Or
I
should
feel
we
like
look
what
at the
would be good
features?
is so yeah, I recently did the tests for incident tabs, and what I'm pretty sure we did is because metrics isn't always showed, because metrics is part of EE and it's not part of so you only get it if you pay for it, right?
I'm actually not
My
sure.
understanding. I'm pretty sure.
On alerts, it might be different.
Oh, okay.
Let's look at the docs because that's always the best place to look. Alert details tab, metric tab. So there's nothing in here that says.
Oh, so it's always available.
Yeah, we'll just look at alerts, all tiers at the top level, and then everything. Okay, on-call response is premium. And that's it. Everything else is available.
Okay, cool. So it was maybe different on incidents because metrics is only available for enterprise. So then what we had to do was test, okay, if we're in, what do you call not enterprise? CE?
Yeah, community edition or FOSS, the FOSS mode. Yeah.
Okay. What's FOSS again?
Free open source software. So that's the license that the community edition runs under. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So if you're running that, then we need a test to say metrics should not be shown. But here we should always assume that metrics is shown.
Yep.
Yep. And the only reason why we had that bug before with giving the wrong index is because there was a bug in metrics not actually being shown. But
exactly.
it should always be shown. And if it isn't, there's a bug. So that's fine. You know?
Yeah.
So because what we did in incidents is we said, okay, well, like index 0 is the first one, and then as we add each one, it has its own index, so the index can change. But in this case, index doesn't change, so that's fine. So yeah, I think it would be easiest to do, a non-shallow mount, so a full mount, and then just check to see that we have the titles, and that we can navigate to the tabs.
Cool. Yeah, so let's do that. Yeah, so we already have mount method mount. In this case,
so do we have a different test that's like navigate to each tab? Because I swear we had that before. It had the for each option.
The one we were looking at earlier. This one.
Yeah, I think this is where the test should be, because the other one is saying like, is metrics tab there? Well, it is there. It just doesn't have a tab, so it's not actually rendered properly. Okay. But
I guess
this should be like, this should throw some errors.
Yeah, it should definitely. I mean, this is called tab navigation, so it makes sense. Currently, all it does is it checks that the right thing is pushed to the router.
Right.
I guess to be more complete, it should check what you just said, which is which tab is actually displayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could make like one little test. We could start with just metrics, so not worry about the parameterization of it yet. Just do one for metrics where it clicks the tab and then checks to see what's displayed, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a bit more of an integration test, that because you're kind of like testing the internals of GL tab a little bit by clicking it.
True.
So that's the only downside with a test like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But because it's like such a core, reliable piece of functionality, I don't think, like, if we ever changed GL tab so that clicking on the tab didn't change tabs, we would break so many things.
Yeah.
So
actually, this URL navigation. So what we're doing here is we're checking. Okay, you change the tab and it changes the URL. But we should also have a test that says, like, if you go to the URL /metrics, you want to be on a metrics tab, which is currently not the case. So that would also, I mean, that would kill two birds with one stone, right? Because we should have a test to make sure that you can land on those pages, that the router is working right, and also that the tab is actually rendered, which should have been a given, but
the only worry with doing that now is I'm not sure off the top of my head how to manipulate the router in a test to do that. So there would be a bit of like probably digging through the router docs and looking at other tests and things. Whereas the click one, at least, should be pretty simple to figure out if it's going to work or not. But I agree, like both tests have validity. And that definitely is kind of a missing one here.
I don't know if we've actually implemented it yet in incidents, but what I feel like we did, or what we talked about or imagined, is like passing the, like, setting the router query when we load the component. Because maybe for more context here, what I found quite confusing, if you're watching this, is so on GitLab, what we do is we don't use view router for the entire application. We generally use Ruby on Rails as our router, and then it renders view components, and some components then take over the router, like in this case. So we have a view application that is rendered by the Ruby on Rails that now takes over the routing from a particular part in the URL. So we have the base URL, and then after this is controlled by view. So what I imagine we would do is when we create the component, or even create the application, the view application, we would give it the router details, which would include like, hey, you're on the metrics page. Maybe. I'm not sure.
We do have one here that I'm in incident tab spec now. We have one that checks if a certain tab is there, and it even clicks the button. So it gets the button. We can see what it does. Yeah, so it clicks it. It finds the active tabs. That's interesting. And then it checks that the text of the active tab is the right title. So yeah, that could be.
And this one isn't actually testing the tabs, GitLab tabs component, because this component also tracks which tab is active, because it does some funny there's some funny little workarounds in this component.
It actually does use an internal implementation detail. It checks the class that the active class is there. So yeah, that's another case where it's relying on the internals of a third-party library, so it's not great.
So I thought this would be a good example, but it's actually an example of something else that needs to be rewritten.
Yeah, I mean, this may be the simplest way, the most pragmatic way of hooking into that, because if you have a third-party component and it doesn't expose something like the active tab as an API, then there's nothing you can rely on potentially. So without having to resort to internal implementation details. So yeah, for now we could just follow a similar pattern to this, maybe.
So the alternative really is doing it in a Ruby integration test.
Yeah. So that's another thing we could do right now, as an option.
Yeah, I think it sounds better, because there are so many different. So the reason we use Ruby is to actually simulate a browser.
Yeah,
so we can see everything that's rendered, and because there's so many things working together, and it's a little bit it's a little bit funny because we're using tabs, but we're using like a custom router implementation. Because usually on GitLab tabs, you just have the current active tab as a search parameter in the like the URL parameters. But instead of using a URL parameter, we're actually changing the, I don't know what you call it, like the core URL. So instead of using question mark active tab equals metrics, we're instead using like issue or incident, or in this case alert / alert ID / metrics or timeline. So because of that, I think it makes sense to do the integration test in Ruby.
Yeah. So this is
we're not using this. This is what
Yeah,
ideally we would use.
yeah, that shows the alternative way of setting
Yeah,
tabs. But
yeah.
for alert details, it's using the like using view rather.
Yeah.
So that's why this is not available for us.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what we were talking about with the different testing levels. So we mentioned that, like we just looked at a unit test, which was checking which tab was available, which tab was currently viewed. And we're also talking about adding a feature test, which is the Ruby one, as a way of doing like a more complete robust test. But the only problem with this is we have this testing pyramid where as you go up, the tests become more expensive. You don't want to have a feature test of every single small piece of functionality. Our policy as we describe it somewhere on this page is, yeah, these tests should only be used when the internal state of objects needs to be tested, cannot be tested at a lower level, only test the happy path, but make sure to add a test case for any regression that couldn't have been caught at a lower level with a better test. So interesting that this is actually the exact case.
What does that mean?
That means that, so a regression is what has just happened. There was a piece of functionality that was working that got broken. So that type of bug, that subtype, it's like a subset of bugs, I guess, that we call regressions. And yeah, so it's not something we couldn't, some case that we wouldn't have like considered, like a security bug wouldn't be a regression, because it's not like something, if there was a security bug, it was probably never working correctly. But in this case, the functionality was working correctly previously, and it has been broken. And yeah, so that is called a regression.
Right, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, so then we would add when a regression happens, I guess you would assume that there's a chance of it happening again. So it's sometimes good to add a test for that specific case to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right. So that's what the example is saying. If a regression is found, add regression tests. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Sweet.
And add them at the lowest level possible.
Sweet.
Yeah. And yeah, as we've seen already by looking at the fact that there is a unit test for this and it didn't catch it, then we know that it's slightly tricky. Like, it's not just obvious that a unit test is always going to catch this type of regression. So
now our next lowest level is an integration test, which we'll do in Ruby.
I think we would do a feature test. Yeah, and integration is kind of interesting because that's the one that is harder to define for us, especially when you have, like, you could have an integration test that tests between two different view components or something like that. But in this case, the feature test, or the other name for it is white box test, is it's doing a full render of the page. So it'll we can look at the existing one. It will render it sets up some data. So it sets up like a user, a project, an alert. It signs in. So the back end is running through all of this while this test is executing. There is like a mock backend, or like a decent amount of the backend is actually running, and then it will visit the page that is under test, and then start making assertions based on what it sees. Yeah. So in this case, I think it's worth having one to check the tabs, because
So
that is
so
like
our
a
lowest
reason.
possible level is the feature test because
And
we have the
yeah.
router thrown in there.
Yeah, there's enough complexity going on
Yep.
that by only doing a JavaScript test, there will always be potential that you've missed something.
Yeah, clear. Makes sense.
Yeah, because the fact that this, as you mentioned about the router, it actually does have a route in Rails, and it has a front-end router, and those things have to also work together. So by only testing it in JavaScript, you're not getting that full interaction. So yeah, in the case of like tabs that are hooked into the router, I think it's definitely worth having a feature test.
And when you say test in JavaScript, you actually mean in Jest, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Because you could write this in JavaScript, but like you could write this full test in JavaScript, but it wouldn't be a Jest test. And we write our tests in Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just
yeah.
being
This is
pedantic
right.
in case it was confusing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Just in our particular context, we happen to write feature tests in Rails and Capybara. Yeah. Yeah, so we can have a go at writing this test, maybe.
Yeah. Do we have a similar test for incidents that we could copy? I'll have.
Yeah, let's have a look. So they always start with in the folder feature for R1s, and then yeah, we have a few. We have incident issue spec, incident detail spec. Let's start with the first one. So it's visiting an incident, it's finding the tabs, it's checking that there's a summary tab.
Well, that might just about be enough.
It's
At
clicking.
least it's checking that they're there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe we don't even. It's a good point, actually. I mean, for this bug, at least, I don't think it's necessary to click the tab and go into it. But if we wanted to, then here's an example of looking. I think this is a tab. I'm actually not 100% sure, but there's more details. Yeah, cool. So yeah,
so here we're making a judgment call on like we could add more testing, but the testing is expensive to run, meaning like it takes a lot of time to run. So we're opting to not test it because it's probably fine. Because we're actually just testing the regression thing, which was make sure that all of the tabs are actually rendered.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so in our case, let's add this. So let's find the right level. When actor has permission to send alert. It's a good question. Do the tabs appear when you don't have permission? If my GTK was working, I could test it.
I think mine's working. So let me check on mine.
Yeah, thanks. Let's just assume for now that you do have to be logged in, because at least if you're logged in, we know it works. Maybe we can move it outside of this.
And the roles, like what role you're logged in as.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got logged in or logged out, and then you've also got guest reporter, developer, maintainer, owner as all the different roles.
Yeah,
There's
but
even more
if
than
that
that.
was the
Actually. Yeah.
case for this specific bit, it would be in the docs that we read.
True. Yep.
For alert.
It should be. Alert details tab, metrics tab. There's nothing in there about the level. Oh, you need to be developer role to access alerts. Okay, so that tells us that you probably don't see much at all if you're not a developer. And then once you're logged in, you can probably see everything below this, like the alert details tab and the metrics tab and stuff. Yeah.
So then you need to be logged in to see alerts page. But if you can see alerts page, you can see everything.
Yeah, that's what it
cool.
seems. That's what it seems to be saying. Yeah. Would have to double check that to see if that's actually the case in the product, but most likely it is. So then,
sorry, you pushed your commit before, right? I just realized if my GTK is running, I can just pull your branch and we can test it on mine.
Yeah. Yep. I'll put a link to the MR in the chat. Oops.
I'll chuck that on YouTube as well in case anyone. There's a few people watching.
Cool. Yeah. So then, where are we at? We were okay. Yeah. So I've just copied this in. This is obviously not going to work because it's doing all sorts of incident specific stuff. So we want to have a wee look at the page structure just to see what which class to select within and how to find the incident, the alert tabs and things like that. Yeah, so over to alert metrics.view. Alert details.view, sorry. Is there a top level class in the template? Doesn't look like it. For now, we can leave that out and we can clean that up later. We can have a look at how we can narrow down the search. The reason for doing that, by the way, is just execution time. So if you start doing this find query on the entire page, there's going to be a lot of irrelevant elements that are being rendered that you then are like searching through. So when you can, it's better to constrain the remainder of the tests to just like a subset of the page. Yeah, so it would be nice to do that, but for now, oops, over to the right one. For now, let's just not worry about that yet. Then we are finding the tabs in the incident test. So let's have a look at the alert details page to see if there's something on the tabs. Yeah, so there is a test ID there already. So we can use that. Interesting that we don't hyphenate that one.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah,
Looks wrong.
it's odd, but
strange.
That's what it is. Maybe we could tidy that up later as well. And then aggregate failures. I don't even know if we're going to have multiple expects, so let's just remove that for now. Yeah, and I think, or maybe we can leave it, because I think we want to do this. We want to check that. Oh, interesting. So this is checking for on the incident page. This is checking that the incident title is on the page somewhere. We're not really worried about that right now. We actually let's rename this so we can say what we're actually doing. It shows the metric images tab. So that we'll keep this as small as possible for now. So that's all we're doing in this test, is that we want to just show that that tab exists.
We're not checking the other tabs.
No. We could do that later, and we can refactor it to be, parameterized to go through the list of tabs and things. But for now, we'll just like keep it as simple as possible, and we can always refactor it later.
I have the GTK running with the branch that we made.
Oh, cool.
When you're ready.
We'll yeah, I guess for you, does it show the metric images tab?
Yeah,
that's the main thing to check.
It shows it, but hang on. Sorry. So I'll stop your screen sharing and do mine.
Yeah, I'll stop that.
So it shows alerts, but it's got a spinner that doesn't finish.
Oh, interesting.
Strange.
And
I just tried to check on. I mean, this is the current live cloud version, and obviously can't check it because it's not displaying.
Also, what would be interesting to check is, does the URL update correctly on your version?
Overview, metrics, activity. Yeah.
Cool. Looks good.
So it wasn't working before because there was no metrics tab.
That's right.
And we already manually said index 1 is metrics. So if we were on activity feed as index 1, it read it as metrics.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the bug. Looks like it's at least fixed for now.
At least a different bug.
Yeah, and now there's another bug. That second bug, that's interesting. There is a chance that is a environment issue.
Yeah, we could look at an incident and see if it does it there, because it's the same. It's rendering the same tab.
I guess the other interesting thing would be what happens if you uploaded a file. Does it display that?
Let's see. I'll stop sharing and do that because it's going to open my files. I don't know what's going to be there. Yeah, it's fine. It's a
bank details, probably. Yeah.
Oh, it's not doing it now anyway. Strange.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Maybe just the GTK was running slowly.
It happens. Yeah. It's running in a lot of different services in a dev environment. So, yeah, it can happen.
Yeah, fine.
Cool. Yeah. So that it looks like it works. Yeah. So it should be okay to go ahead with the fix and this test.
Right.
Yeah. So I can share again if we want to have a quick little last look at these tests. Yeah. So we want to show metrics tab. actually, we don't even care about the description, right? And we're not clicking the tab yet. So really, all we need is just this line. Yeah. So I think this should be okay to try as a first draft of this test. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember how to run these. So I think I should be able to go bin rspec. Oops, I thought I copied this. I think, oh no, that is the right. Whoops, that is the right.
That's
button.
right. I think you might be able to do like #L38 to just run that line.
Oh yeah.
But it needs to build the whole thing anyway, so
yeah,
it's not that much faster.
There's hardly any tests in here. Yeah, so this should be interesting. I have a prediction about this, that my environment, since my environment isn't running, and this test needs the environment,
right.
it may not work. But what we could do is push the test and see what happens on the pipeline.
Yeah, we'd have to be pretty confident though, right? I mean, it should be fine.
Yeah, I'm reasonably confident that the pipeline will pass, and or you could check it out and run the test on yours.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I have no idea what it's doing now. It's doing a bunch of tests setup. Interesting. Wow.
That's why it's so expensive to run.
Well, I don't know if it does this every time. Maybe some of it's cached with the pipelines.
Oh yeah. I guess it would create, if it was running all of the RSpec tests, it would create the environment once and then.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so in the meantime, let's just double check this, maybe push it. Oops, sorry, I didn't do a message. There we go. I've already ignored that. Add feature spec for alert image tab. This will be, that commit will be squashed anyway, so I'm not too worried about the commit message. Yeah, and then I'll push it. If actually I just cancelled it. If we want to not run the pipeline, I believe we can do this fancy thing where we go option ci.skip, and we can also put it in the commit message. So let's try that way. Reword this as, oops. Oh, interesting. That's a bunch of stuff finally starting up. I believe we can do that as well.
Why do you want to skip it?
Just in case it doesn't pass. I was
okay.
Interesting. I need to update Chrome driver. I probably haven't.
Oh yeah, because if you skip it and then you push it, and then
you can pull and run it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to see if this is the exact these tests want to add, want to run Chrome driver a lot. Yeah, so let's try pushing this. And then in the GitLab UI, we should see under pipelines, So it's the existing one. Oh my gosh, that's still running. Oh, hey, I didn't like my indentation. So I actually it's getting to the point of running these tests, but let's just cancel that because when it's already failed one, and I think I think my environment just isn't working, so it's probably not gonna work. All sorts of stuff is breaking. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I have some
indentation.
Oh yeah, I see. This is indented too far.
Oh, true.
So that should be enough. Yep.
I have that running automatically on my setup, but it is slow. Like you have to save it, and then it'll take like 5 to 10 seconds to be like,
yeah.
Wait, give me a minute.
I think if it were in editor, it would only run on that file, and it would probably be nice and quick. Not sure how to set that up in VS Code, but I know if you're using like RubyMine or something like that, then it can be nicely integrated. Let's just say fix me. Oops, I didn't add.
Need a capital, right? Otherwise, it's not gonna. The commit message has to start with a capital, otherwise, it's not gonna be pushed.
I'm gonna fix up
before you're gonna
I
fix it now.
push. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, just interactive rebase fix up. There might be a faster way to do that, but now I have to force push with lease because I've already pushed it. That commit.
What's with lease?
Yeah. So this is a good habit to get into. Force push will push no matter what. Force push with lease will check that someone else hasn't pushed since you last pushed. I believe as So it's a way of it's a safer way of doing force pushes, and there's usually this is what you want, as opposed to force push, like the full force push if you're like deliberately trying to overwrite someone else's commit. So I like to use that. Yeah,
makes sense. I'm usually just overriding my own mistakes.
Yeah, that's 90% of the time anyway. But yeah, the other thing, the other use case, I suppose, is like sometimes you're working on a merge request and you've done like /rebase in the UI, like the GitLab UI, and it's like triggered a rebase, and then a force push will just overwrite that.
Yeah.
Actually, a force push with lease will not. Force push with lease may overwrite that as well. I'm not sure, but yeah. At least some of the time it's safer. Interesting. So it's still running the pipeline, even though we did CI skip. So maybe
What's the commit message in the MR?
Yeah, good question.
Is that right?
Oh, maybe I didn't do it right. Skip. Okay, so there's the push option. Now we're getting into like not actual documentation. CI space skip plus. There we go. Here's the docs. Yeah, so I type I typed it wrong. So if it's in the commit message, it has a space, or if it's on the command line options, it has a dot. But yeah, cool. I'll just manually stop the pipeline, and I'll let you pull that and run it, James.
Yep. I'm trying to run it now. Range error message. Yeah, let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I pulled it and then
Oh,
it's
it's because you're
yeah.
yeah.
It's the wrong
Mhm.
one. Okay, cool. Not strange.
Yeah, I'm not sure why my environment's not working. Sometimes it just needs a laptop restart or something.
I feel like the last few days some Ruby versions have changed, and
Yep,
mine's
that
taken a
sometimes
lot
breaks
of
it.
like reconfiguring and
Yep.
and you're swapping back and forth between different branches. So it's like, okay, Ruby version has changed, and then you go back to the different version. It's been wreaking havoc for me, I think.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new GitLab front end Copilot while this is running?
No, I haven't.
It's pretty cool. The instructions are in a confidential issue. So if you're GitLab staff, you can see it, but you can do cool things like write HTML page with button.
If the instructions are in a confidential issue, does that mean we should be showing this? Just checking.
I don't think it's no, I met one of the guys working on it, and he said like I don't think it's a problem.
Cool.
Maybe this is an issue because it's a I didn't call it. So now it's a JavaScript file. So then you can do like tab, and
cool.
It'll like predict what you want. I mean that's not right, but
yeah, that's cool. So that's similar to GitHub Copilot, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
No. I did have it running. Yeah, it's supposed to just predict yeah, same as GitHub Copilot, but it's in the testing stages.
Cool.
And it was a bit funny because it yeah, like I created a HTML page and I was trying to do this, and then it was giving this information as if I was writing it from a backend service, writing HTML like to pass through. So I put the HTML in a variable and some funny things like this. So don't know, but it'd be interesting to watch it.
Yep. This Elasticsearch indexer always takes a wee bit of time. Did you know that it's possible to cache that if you're running Aspect a lot? There's a I think it's a gdk.yaml option to cache it, and then yeah, it seems to be smart enough that if you do like GDK update, it'll switch off. It'll like reset the cache and stuff.
So how would you do it? CDK.yaml, you said? Or like in the YAML file.
Yeah, it's one of the. I believe so. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll just have a wee look at the GDK docs.
Oh, maybe a level above this anyway. Is that going to magically work? I doubt it. No, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I forget what the details are of that.
All right.
This is a good test of the test setup from scratch.
Yeah, I already did this. I'm just off screen trying to search for this error message because I can't remember how you fix it. What's the reason why we're not I think this will do it. What's the reason we're not running this on GitLab.com?
Oh yeah, we totally could. It'll just take probably even longer because it won't.
Yeah.
Because it has to run every single test. Yeah, so we could be waiting for. I'm not sure how long it takes these days, but half an hour at least. So yeah, in theory, running it locally should be faster, but we're just seeing that if you got and that
here we go.
child means is a failure. Yeah, interesting.
Oh, so there's empty HTML. Great. Okay.
Oh wait, was that a Chrome driver error? Unable to get Chrome driver. Yeah, so that might be a common thing with that is the Chrome driver version has to match your Chrome version.
Yeah, so I just ran this.
Oh yeah.
Like the quarantine, and it should work out which Chrome driver. Let's try again now that that's done. Maybe gonna have to wait again. Hopefully it's cached some stuff.
Yeah, we'll see.
Otherwise we can have other interesting chats.
Yeah. The other option could be just to end the stream because might not be particularly engaging,
particularly interesting. That's true.
To wait around for another few minutes, but
we posted the link to the MR anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let's stop it then.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
But yeah, we've looked at so we made a fix, we updated some feature specs, we talked about different ways we could test it in JavaScript.
Sorry, the test did finish and it failed differently.
Oh, interesting.
Let's have a look.
Oh, didn't find the test ID. Interesting. There should be a link to an HTML file in there somewhere that you can might be down below.
Screenshot should not could not be saved.
Oh,
Path,
interesting.
current path is empty. Strange.
Was there one at
But
the
something else
bottom?
should have failed first, right?
Maybe. It actually, I don't think there's any.
What is this?
As there's a visit. Oh, there's an expect page to have the right title. Yeah, I actually just noticed a problem as well, that I didn't rename the variable incident tabs. Should be alert tabs. So I'll just make that
like
change.
this. And change it here.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. But that shouldn't affect the test. That's just
Can we just expect the page to have the content? Oh no, because then metrics could be anywhere in the page.
yeah. Yeah, maybe it's that we need to do within. Yeah. So maybe I am like super inexperienced when it comes to
Oh,
Capybara
how about
testing.
this?
Oh, nice.
Within alert management details, alert tabs equals find, and then expect. We could just
Yeah, just same thing.
shows the alert tabs. Okay, so this shows. This is the alert details tab. Okay, so maybe. Okay, so the problem isn't that. Sorry, there is an alert details tab on the incidents page, but we're looking at the alerts page in the alert tabs, which is different. So
yeah.
So we might not actually. Should we be in alert details? Or is this alert details tab?
Yes, we should. I think we should actually be in that other test. And it's kind of interesting that both of those exist. Alert management spec.
Alert details spec.
Yeah, kind of odd that there's that. It's there. It does some environment stuff, so maybe that's there because of some legacy environment functionality.
Okay.
But yeah, that alert details spec file definitely seems like actually the right one to do it in. So
So this one. So not this one. So like if we got rid of this.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just cut it. And then in here, we're saying it shows the alert tabs. So we're saying within alert management details, we want to find the alert tabs. And in those alert tabs, we want the contact alert details.
Yeah.
So we also want, sorry. So we also want metrics.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that should be it, right?
Yeah. And then now, so that's a different file. So when you run it,
yeah.
Yeah, you'll run that file and then yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so it must have automatically cached that Elasticsearch. Just haven't run an RSpec test in a long time.
Yeah, nice. While this is running, we could potentially
Oh,
make a
it
commit.
passed.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So let's change it so that it make sure alert details test. So that should
Yeah.
fail.
Or maybe change the metrics on.
Oh, metrics, of course.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, see, like it takes a minute to save it.
That's annoying that it blocks
So there's
the
been
save.
a few times when I've like run a test again, but it hasn't saved it
Still
yet.
hasn't saved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a pain. It runs it on commit, which is good enough for me. Oh, does it?
Yeah, it runs it on
Yeah.
commit. It just shows you like, hey, you've done your formatting wrong. I'm like, I don't know how to do it right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
please fix it for me.
Cool.
All right, great.
Failed in the correct way.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. Looks great. Brilliant. So yeah.
Okay. So that should pass.
Yep. Okay.
Well,
Yeah. How's that
unsaved.
alert? Oh, interesting.
Hey.
How
Okay,
does
so this one.
yeah, that one, yeah. Yep, so that looks like it's back to where it was. And that should be, yeah, good to push.
Cool. All right. Can I just do fixed tests, fix aspect tests? So
yeah, it's gonna be squashed anyway. So
oh yeah.
Yep. Cool. So that email is actually pretty close. It just needs the description. It needs a description, some screenshots, some how to validate it for the reviewer, like some steps to reproduce it and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty close. So
sweet. So I'll do that boring stuff now.
yeah, if you want, I also don't mind doing it.
Nah, I should.
Cool. Cool.
I'll take Paulina for a review.
Yeah, nice. Because neither of us are allowed to review it since we're both pushed to it now. Both committed. Yeah, cool. Perfect. Well, yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, perfect. It's been our most like best wrapped up stream, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Nice.
Cool.
Well,
thanks
for watching.
If you have questions for Tristan or I, instead of asking in the YouTube channel, you can ask in the issue or the MR that we're linked to.
Yeah.
And then we'll actually see it.
Yeah. And there's a community Discord where you can ask questions as well, more general questions about how all of this works and contributing and stuff.
Sweet.